this particular paper, and I kind of want to just have a broad discussion about political ideology too, because it's a really fascinating topic. At least I think so. In psychology, political psychology, just psychology in general, like it has always struck me as quite the fun thing to talk about. So that is what is going on now. Some stream updates, some account updates. So I submitted a new emote for subscribers, even though I don't have any subscribers. I just submitted it. You can use your channel points to grab it though for 24 hours, so that's nice. So if you are a student, you can still use the emote. It's a rendering of my face as best as I could, with love heart eyes, and with Psych on top of it. So Psych love. That's essentially what I was trying to go with, and I want to get more emotes on there for various things that I might say or do in stream, like often. So if anybody has any ideas with that, that'd be pretty cool too. What else? Oh yeah, a couple of follows that happened since the last stream. Captain Sausages, thanks for the follow, and Turtle Girl Ph.D. also thank you for the follow. I'm assuming that that person studies turtles. Yeah, I would say that that sounds about right. Yeah. Oh. So yeah, those two follows happened over, and so the goal here is, so there's a new sub goal bar here that is indicating like September follower goal 265, and there's a percentage in there now. The other bar that I had in the past couple of streams wasn't updating, so I don't know. This one might not update either, but I don't know. And then yeah, so the goal is to get to 300 followers by that time. That would be nice. We got a couple more. I'm trying to, broaden the reach of the stream, just in case. So this article, I keep doing that. So this article, it should be, I'm fingers crossed. So it got accepted in, I want to say, it got accepted in May, I believe. And we got proofs right away that needed to be approved, right? It's just like the review process is so ridiculous that you get your proofs right away, but then you have to wait 5 months for it to actually get published. So, I mean, I imagine that they are a bit backlogged in getting stuff out. So, the idea that my co-authors and I wanted to play with here was do highlighter, I guess. Was talk about how liberals and conservatives are different when it comes to experiential evidence-based things. So, it was me and Randy, which we have been collabing for a few years, and then his undergraduate, Michelle. Pretty cool. These are all our orchids, or ORCIDs. I like calling them orchids. I think that may be how you're supposed to pronounce them, but yeah. So in this particular study, what we did was we had like 2 studies where we had people self-identify. We gave them scalar options, and we, we asked them a number of ways what their ideology was, but eventually we just went with categorical, sort of, you know, are you liberal or are you conservative? Libcons, you know, libcons. And then we gave them a quote in a fake study. A fake study. I'll show you that here. Scroll down. Where is it? Here. Yeah, here we go. So the article experts were constructed similarly to how you would see them. So there was a common pseudoscience misconception, and it contained a quote from a researcher. So there's a psychologist out there. His name is Adam Grant, and he's writing. He's written about some of these ideas of ideology playing a role in science denialism and issues surrounding all of that. And so we called this person Grant Adamson. So good. Grant Adamson. And so we had... it was great. So we had a fake person. So in study one, it was an article excerpt where the quote was from the expert, and then there was a quote from a professional. Oops. Somebody who is in the industry and kind of contradicts the person, okay? And we wanted to have that dichotomy there. And then we asked the participants, hey, what do you think of the credibility of the researcher? What do you think of the credibility of the professional? And we had the 4 issues here was the MBTI, which we have fun with all the time. The inability of managed stocks to beat the market. Lucky streaks in gambling. And then magnetic bracelets. I'm sure you've heard of magnetic bracelets. So those are the 4 things that participants looked at. The full text is in our supplement, so hopefully they'll publish that too. We also pre-tested those 4 things for apolitical qualities to it. And so we tested them against these things that are political ideas, okay? And so what we wanted with the 4 things that we did show them was that they were apolitical, right? That if I go back up here, that these 4 things were apolitical. So there would be no difference or preconceived ideas for their for their answers on here. The credibility of the researcher versus the credibility of the we'll say professional, right? You wouldn't. So the idea is you wouldn't, if you were to take the MBTI, for example, you wouldn't go, oh, okay, conservatives will believe the professional, and then liberals believe the scientist. Nah, we didn't want that. We didn't want that. So we tested them against these, which is, pros and cons of vaccination, or so climate change, vaccination, not super politicized, but can be politicized. And then GMOs, which is, lib, bad, con, good, or ambivalent. So we looked at that and then obviously abortion. And then evolution too, right? So you can imagine that there are going to be ideological differences on those, and we did a fairly good job of finding 4 topics that had nothing to do with politics. And so any differences that we observe in liberals and conservatives are going to be based on inherent differences between the two and not ideological differences, if that makes sense. We had to really fight for that one, and make sure that it was something that was clear, and the reviewers liked. And yeah, so we found that difference here. That's what this test is. That's what this data is showing. Checks out. AP or the apolitical ones are good, and the political ones are politicized, you know. And so we ask these 2 questions: to what extent do you think the viewpoints of the 2 sources quoted in the article seem valid on a 1 to 5 scale? And then how credible do you think each of the 2 sources in the article seemed? So do you agree with the 2 viewpoints? And do you think each of the 2 sources is credible? So we're asking for 1, belief, and then 2, credibility, which is really important. And we wanted to separate those 2 constructs. Like, you could believe something and it could not be credible, right? And so what we found, where are my graphs? Oh, did they get put at the end? All right, well, fine. We have a bunch of stuff. Oh, the other thing that's important for this study is, I forgot to mention, scrolling up here. We made a new scale. We called it the feelings are truth scale. Feelings are truth, right? So go back to draw. Composed of the following 5 items. People know deep down what's true and what's not. All right. Some people have intuitive senses of what's true and what's not. Yeah, more intuition. A gut belief that is something that is not true is a very good is a good reason to think it's not true, right? So we wanted to find out with this one. Intuition can reveal more about truth about a situation than objective facts, and gut feelings are a kind of truth. Okay, to aid in the validation, we went through with CRT and need for cognition on the REI. So we had need for cognition and the faith and intuition scales to compare the 2. And we wanted to validate this scale, but we also wanted to diverge somewhat from NFC and F5, as well as the CRT, the cognitive reflection test. And then we had a few important hypotheses about what was going to go on. So we wanted to start with the idea that there could be symmetry and asymmetry, either one, okay? Where on that first question that we asked them, they agree with the scientist, right? So lib equal con on this one, okay? But disagree on the professional in study 1 or the commenter in study 2. So lib does not equal con in this sense, okay? So that was the idea with that one, that we validate the scales here and we get some converging validity, right? As well as reliability. That's what we were hoping for, of course. Converging validity with, so we called them the fat scale. We didn't call it the fat scale, actually, to be honest with you. We left it as feelings are truth because the one of the issues that is appearing in some journal articles and some APA writing is that, stop using all the acronyms. Just write it, okay? So not that it equals, but converges. So I'll do a equals with an arrow. REI FI and REI NFC. Okay. And that the last one is that feelings or truth would be a mediator. So fat mediator between ideology to the belief or ideology to credibility. Credi. I'll call it credi, right? So the mediator acts on these two, and I'll show the image in just a second. So we did a mediation analysis here, right? Now we add a caveat here about causality, because technically political ideology is bidirectional with belief and credibility ratings. It's technically bidirectional. But what we're saying here is that this is more of a subject variable, and subject variables as an attribute tend to come first in a cause-effect relationship. So we were thinking that this was more of a cause than the ratings, which would be an effect. So that's what we were trying to do there. Okay. But I think it's this entire paragraph is super useful for when you're writing a paper that involves things that are quasi-experimental, like political ideology, and like new things, like our feelings of truth. This is new, so we didn't want to go ahead and start talking about how being conservative means this or being liberal means this. So adding in these caveats is really, I think, a really good practice, because more or less what you see in papers previous to the last 10 years, so like prior to 2010, 2011, is stronger conclusions that are not good, right? So really, really bad things.
I got a bad feeling about this.
And you're like, is it really causal? Should it be causal? Nah, it shouldn't be causal, right? So, what did we find? We found that, actually, before we, is a fake out drum roll. Before we jump into what we found, I wanted to explain what we did in study 2. So study 2, we used the same things, the same 4 scenarios: MBTI, beating the stock market, no lucky streaks, and magnetic bracelets. Okay. But the other thing that we changed was that we added a commenter. I think that's up here, right here. So now the science rejector was a commentator, a commenter. So commenter, we don't know their expertise, right? So everybody you find on the internet, very little expertise, but we don't when we come across those people, we don't actually know whether or not they're experts in their field, right? So that's why we use this to counteract the named professional, right? So we could have a difference there, okay? But yeah, no, I want to keep scrolling, and so, just based on demographics, we have conservative and liberal on this graph. I used R for this, ggplot2. Oh, so good. I love these colors, by the way. So I asked my co-authors, what colors would you like? Not knowing whether or not the Political Psychology, the journal, would actually put them in there, right? And you can clearly see here that prefer the rejector. So the rejector in study 1 was the professional. And then study 2 was the commenter. Okay. And we labeled a preference from like who they thought was more or less the one that they would prefer to listen to. And you can see quite a big difference here in that. So liberals more than 75%, more than 3/4 of the time, preferred the scientists or researcher. And then in study 2, it was a little bit lower for liberals in this study. Completely new sample, completely different sample, but still much higher than conservatives. And the prefer them equally is a smaller percentage for liberals than it is for conservatives. So that's really interesting. And then as far as that mediation model is concerned, here are our mediation models. So in study 1 was a little bit stronger than study 2, and we kind of chalk this up to the fact that expertise is known. So that's what makes this indirect effect stronger versus this one. So it's not a solid relationship that we found across the two studies. It's not a solid one, but we did find that feelings are truth is related to, in both studies, is related to the rejector evaluation. So the more feelings are truth, or intuition, we'll call that intuition, the more of that equals rejector, ER, rejector eval increases. So we found a positive effect there. Okay, that's what these are, positive correlations between the two. Okay, positive correlations. So the more you rely on the fact that truth is generated by your own feelings, okay, and not emotions. I don't mean emotions, but the more they're involved with this big mamma jamma here, you end up with a situation that the rejector is going to, the rejector evaluation, so more favorable. Okay, more favorable. And in study 1, what we found then was that there was a positive correlation between ideology and feelings or truth, in the sense, and this is positive. So what we said was that, and the way we scored this was that conservatives were higher numbers on this measure right here, higher numbers. And so the more conservative you are, is going to lead to increased faith, feelings are truth, or in a reliance on intuition when determining what you like. Okay. Which I think is really cool. This is really cool. And this was a labor of love too, because we focused on feelings are truth for a long time. Randy and I focused on creating a really good, really good measure that we could use in other situations. And so we validated this scale by being able to publish this study as soon as it comes out. Man, I can't wait to share it. But we can go. And the great news about these two mediation models is that they're controlled for. Okay. They're in control variables in each model, and these are very strong correlations. The biggest bummer was we didn't catch that same mediation, the IV to MV relationship with the 0.06. It wasn't strong enough, so we didn't get that same situation here. But we did get a stronger effect over here, which is kind of interesting. This study 1 was really nice, which prompted us to then go to study 2. Whether or not we could do something else, and we just kind of missed it in this cross-sectional design, is obviously left to the, I suppose, the ages. I don't know if we're gonna run anything else on this again. Depends on what kind of response it gets when it's finally out. And we have a number of tables, which are fun, although this tables period is so big. Table 1 period. And so you can go through these tables. These tables are amazing. I can't wait to see what this looks like in typeset. Oh, it's gonna be so good. So what's our main conclusion from this? Well, not to throw conservatives under the bus, but it appears, and our study, set of studies, our paper here really is converging evidence on conservatives using more intuition as a function of their ideology. So that is, relying on intuition seems to be something that conservatives do more often. And because when something seems intuitively correct versus scientifically correct, the more people use intuition, the more that they'll lead toward things that are seemingly correct to them, right? Their gut, what their gut thinks. And this leads to trust in non-science sources. Now, granted, science is just one way of knowing things in the world, in the universe, and whatever. I, as a scientist, think it's the best way and to know things, and kind of really the only legit way to know things. But of course, I have my own biases, my own intuitions, and things like that. But it appears that people who I self-identify, and also that when that identification is corroborated by indirect measures of ideology, you seem to find the correlations there fairly easily, that ideology seems to have this effect on decision making, and those decisions are going to be more intuition based. Okay. Which is a bummer. I'll tell you why. Because there is a strain / infection of anti-intellectualism in the United States, and it's fairly insidious from my perspective, and as if science has some vendetta against reality, and that's 100% not the case. 100% not the case. Scientists may be bad actors, but science doesn't have a bias. Only people do. And I think what happens here is that if enough voices say, hey, discount what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're doing, then we have problems, man. We have some problems. It's not great. It is not great. It almost makes you want to go. So that's one of the things that this particular paper suggests. So if anybody has any questions, let me know. Let me know.